Hello, I am very happy and delighted to be here, and it's a big pleasure and honor for me to have this lecture in this beautiful museum. So let me first introduce myself. My name is Svitlana Melnyk, and I'm a senior lecturer in the Department of Slavic and East European Languages and Cultures at Indiana University. And I'm Ukrainian. I was born in Ukraine. I grew up in Ukraine. My parents are now in Ukraine. Actually, I was born in these beautiful Carpathian mountains in the small town Vygoda, and my brother and my parents live there. And I visit Ukraine every single year. And we had a very happy life in Ukraine. And then the full-scale invasions happened in February 2022. And since that time, I have been reading news constantly, and I have been watching so many different videos with our soldiers, with our defenders. And I do remember one video with our defender, and our soldier said that it's very important to preserve our culture because it's the core of our identity. And I think that's true. Ukrainian culture is a core of Ukrainian identity, and it's inspiration for resilience, for our resistance right now. So let me continue with a very simple basic facts about Ukraine. I am sure you all know about Ukraine, but just review to make a brief introduction. So basically, Ukraine is the largest country, is entirely located in Europe, right? It covers the area of more than 200,000 square miles. And in terms of US states, Ukraine is around the same size as Texas. So you can see here, Texas, right? So let me tell you a few words about Ukrainian symbols, our national symbols. Each country has their own symbol, its own symbols, right? For Ukraine, it's first of all our national flag, the national anthem, our national language, Ukrainian language, as well as the Ukrainian coat of arms. And Ukrainian flag, it's you can see Ukrainian flags everywhere in the US. Those are national colors, blue and yellow. Those colors are quite, I would say, not old, probably even ancient. They came from the 12th century. The top represents sky, the yellow represents wheat or other crops, and if you can look here, you can see the sky is blue. Look at the Ukrainian flag. The sky is blue, the field is yellow, wheat is yellow, canola is yellow, beautiful sunflowers are yellow, and that's very important. Before the war, Ukraine was known as the breadbasket of Europe. Right now, we cannot claim it anymore because many our lands were destroyed by the war, especially in the south and especially in the east of Ukraine. So, beautiful, beautiful country. And this is our state symbol. The state symbol is the coat of arms, and we call this trezub, or trident. And the trident is also a very old symbol. Maybe you are familiar with the ancient state Kievan Rus. So actually this symbol came from this old state, Kievan Rus. And it's known as one of the most important symbols of the old Prince Volodymyr the Great, who actually baptized the Kievan Rus in the 10th century. So basically, most historians agree that this was a symbol of Holy Trinity, of the Holy Trinity, right? Because it's a trident. Or it was also most likely a stylized falcon, a bird. So it's very visible here in the coin. The important symbol of Ukraine as a state. It's our national anthem. And the title, the main line, the most prominent probably line of the national anthem is Ukraine has not yet perished. Ще не вмерла Україна. So, are you familiar with the Ukrainian anthem? Would you like to listen to the Ukrainian version,
Yes.
the translation? Okay.
Can we sing it?
No. I can sing it, yes, but in this particular version you can see it. Let me see. Oh, I apologize. Oh, technology is evil.
We all agree.
We agree.
So, how can I, what? I apologize for that. But oh, here.
there it is.
I apologize for that.
Sound on? Is the sound on down Tom?
Where is the sound supposed to be?
It's the third symbol in.
The speaker. It looks like it's.
Yeah, it's
It says it's on.
Yeah, it says mute.
Oh, click the little play button.
Oh, click the play button.
The little first one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
It's not playing.
So,
Just somebody pull it up on your phone and put it against the microphone.
okay, so let me, how can I advance this slide?
Okay, because my phone's engaged. There we go.
Thank you so much, and that was the national Ukrainian anthem. And there are very prominent words here. We will lay down our souls and bodies all for our freedom. And this is what exactly our defenders are doing right now. They are defending they are laying our bodies and souls for our freedom. So let me tell you a few words about the history of creation of the national anthem. The anthem was created by a very famous, the lyrics were created by a very famous Ukrainian poet, ethnographer, and prominent folklorist Pavlo Chubinsky. And Pavlo Chubinsky lived not far from Kiev in central Ukraine, and he created the lyrics sometime in the 1862. And then the lyrics, the poem became very, very popular. And at that time, Ukraine was split between two empires, the Russian Empire and the Hungarian Empire. So Pavlo Chubensky lived in the Russian Empire, on the territory of Ukraine, which belonged to the Russian Empire. But the lyrics was so popular, spread through the entire Ukraine. And in Western Ukraine, a priest and a composer, whose name was Mikhailo Verbitsky, composed a music in 1863. And this is how this most important song in our Ukrainian history appeared. And it's very important that it's a unity. It's a song which unites Western and Eastern Ukraine together. It's a symbol of our of united Ukraine. So, oh, wonderful. So here our heroes, Pavlo Chubensky and Mikhailo Verbitsky, the authors of the national anthem of Ukraine. And at the same time, it's very important to talk about the name Ukraine itself. So the name Ukraine first appeared in written documents which describe events in the 12th or 15th century. So it's a very old name. And according to the famous Canadian historian of Ukrainian origin, Magochi, as a term referring to a non-specific and even ethnically non-Ukrainian territory, the name Ukraine dates from the 12th and 13th centuries. As a name for a specific territory, it dates from the late 16th century. And as a name for lands inhabited by ethnic Ukrainians, it dates from the 19th century. So it's very important that Ukraine, the name, the word itself, Ukraine, is a very old word. And according to Russian propaganda, maybe you have heard that Ukraine didn't exist, that it was created by Bolshevik leader Lenin sometimes in 1917, which is not true, because on this particular map, by a famous French traveler and engineer, Beauplan, you can see Ukraine, you can see the name, the title Ukraine is exactly here. And the map, you are the historian society, right? You can see that the map is upside down, right? So look at this particular name, Moscovia, right? So at that time, Russian didn't exist in the 17th century. Russian didn't exist because at that time that was simply Muscovy. And Russian, the name Russia appeared later. So this is a very interesting fact, I believe. So one more very prominent symbol of our national identity is the Ukrainian language. And we say that that's, regarding Ukraine, it's very important to say Ukraine, not the Ukraine, because the Ukraine, the name the Ukraine refers to Ukraine's colonial past, so that's very important. Back to our language. Our language is also a big symbol of Ukrainian culture and identity. And in Ukraine, we say it's a sole state language of Ukraine. But what does it mean, sole state language of Ukraine? It means that for Ukraine, the Ukrainian language became a state symbol together with the national anthem, flag, and the coat of arms. It means that the Ukrainian language is a big part of our identity. And it means that Ukrainian language, and you can see on those posters, it's a language of resistance, it's a weapon, and it's a one of the main tools of our state formation. And that's here you can see language is a weapon, and here language is our security. So it's very important. In many stages of its history, the Ukrainian language has been subject to suppression and bans. For example, in the 19th century, when Ukraine was a part of the Russian Empire and the Ukrainian language was called the Little Russian language, not the Ukrainian language. So at that time, one of the imperial decrees stated that a Little Russian language does not, and cannot exist. And here you can see the name of this document was the Valuyev decree. It was published in 1863, and you can see the translation from a history of Ukraine published by famous historian Paul Mabochi. But despite all the bans and prohibitions, the Ukrainian language has been preserved by the Ukrainian people as a national and state language, which is very, very important. In our national anthem, there are another very important phrase. So we will show, brothers, that we are the Cossack nation. So basically, let's talk about why Ukrainians are the Cossack nation and who the Cossacks are, the Ukrainian Cossacks. So the Ukrainian Cossacks are a very important part of our culture. Also, they play a leading role in the formation of modern Ukraine, according to a famous historian, Harvard professor Serhiy Plokhy. Ukrainian Cossacks were freemen and runaway serfs who emerged by the late 16th century as a powerful military force on the lower Dnieper in the southern Ukraine. In the no-man lands at that time, we called this no-man lands. There they were established and homesteads and defended themselves from the Tatar, from the Crimean Tatar raids, built fortified camps, and those fortified camps were known as Sichi in Ukrainian. Sich, maybe you have heard Zaporizhian Sich next to below the Zaporizhia rapids. So this is a drawing of one of those fortified camps. The Ukrainian Cossacks were reckless warriors and defenders of Ukrainian lands from Polish oppression and the Crimean Tatars raids, as I mentioned before. And under the leadership of their commander, whose name was Bogdan Khmelnytsky, and that's Bogdan monument to Bogdan Khmelnytsky, they rebelled against Polish rule in 1648, seeking to establish their political freedom and practice their Orthodox religion. Because at that time, Ukraine was a part of the Polish crown. So this bloody revolt culminated in the establishment of a Cossack state, autonomous polity known as the Hetmanate. And the new state needed allies. And after more than 5 years of warfare, Khmelnytsky entered into the alliance with whom? With Moscow, recognizing the sovereignty of the Tsar in exchange for his military protection against Ukraine's enemies. The agreement between the Cossacks and Tsar was signed in 1654. It is known as a Pereyaslav agreement because it was signed in the city of Pereyaslav in central Ukraine. And the text of the treaty has been lost, and the signing ceremony itself revealed profound differences between the two states' political models. After the Cossacks took an oath to the Tsar, they expected the Muscovite envoys to do the same to observe the rights of the Cossacks. But the Russian refused. Because the traditions of democracy, they were nurtured among the Ukrainian Cossacks, but not in the, at that time in the Muscovy land, in the land of Russians. So this is a very famous painting of which belongs to the which was created in 1951. The artist is Mikhailo Khmelko, and look at the title: "Forever with Moscow, forever with the Russian people, and it's very important to stress that the war didn't start in Ukraine 2 years ago. It started in 1654. This is when our whole problem with Russia started. Okay, so, and it's very important to underscore that as a democratic state, Cossacks even created their own constitution. The constitution was created by Cossack leader Philip Orlik, and it happened at the beginning of the 18th century. Please pay attention to this particular man. You see the big painting. There are many people. And pay attention to this particular man. And this boy. And later I will tell you a bit more about this. So, after the signing the treaty, the sovereignty of the Hetmanate of the Cossack state began to be increasingly limited. The Cossack state finally ceased to exist at the end of the 18th century, and in 1775, the Russian Empress Catherine II destroyed the Zaporizhian host, the Zaporizhian siege, all fortified Cossack camps. Including the Zaporizhian siege, which was the last Cossack stronghold. And I would like to tell you a very moving story about the last leader of the Zaporizhian Cossack, whose name was Petro Kalnyshevsky. Petro Kalnyshevsky was a very prominent leader. He took part in the Russo-Turkish War of 1768-1774 and was honored with a gold medal with brilliance for courage. And despite all that, he actually helped Russia in its war, right? And despite that, in 1776, he was exiled to a monastery on the Solovets Island. Here's the monastery, where he was kept a prisoner in extremely difficult condition. According to some sources, 3 times a year he was allowed outside to breathe the open air. He was released in 1801 when he was 111 years old. Kalnyshevsky, already blind at that time, decided to remain in the monastery, where he died 2 years later in 1803. After his release, he became a monk there at the age of 112. Look at this cell. Look at this cell. Yes, this cell in which Petro Kalnyshevsky was imprisoned and died, actually. So basically, Petro Kalnyshevsky was one more among all those victims by the Russian state, among many of our Ukrainian victims. So, and Petro Kalnyshevsky was a deeply religious man, and all Ukrainian Cossacks, it's very important to stress they were fighting for freedoms, for the freedom of our lands, and also for Christianity, for our faith as well. And there are many beautiful cultural traditions related to Ukrainian Cossacks, and I would like to show you just a few. For example, this is a very common, very popular image. The name is Kozak Mamai, and Kozak Mamai is a legendary hero in Ukrainian folklore. Mamai, it's not a Ukrainian word, it's a word of Turkic origin. It means a wandering Cossack, a wanderer. And for many years, he has appeared in thousands of images, in folk tales, especially in those folk paintings. The name of this painting is Kozak Mamai, and there were many different paintings of Kozak Mamai. So he was one of the main characters and became very popular. And he could be seen everywhere, the window shutters, the walls, on the walls, everywhere. So the image itself was really very popular. And That was a Cossack with a heralok, with a horse, with a musical instrument, and with a bottle of vodka, горілка, and with a saber. The saber was very weaponry was really very, very. You see here all the attributes of these paintings are here. So basically, it's a very interesting tradition, this painting tradition, which relates to the Ukrainian Cossacks. And another tradition I would like to tell you, the Ukrainian bards, Ukrainian folk musicians. The name for those musicians is Kobzari, Kobzar. Have you noticed on the painting about the Kobzar with the Ukrainian bandura musical instrument? That was Kobzar with his guide. So basically, they were very common in the Zaporizhian siege among the Ukrainian Cossacks. They live in Zaporizhian siege. They were respected by the Cossacks because they helped to raise their brave spirit and their morale. And some of them were executed by the Poles for performing Ukrainian national songs and incited popular revolts in Poland at that time. And Kobzari were professional performers who lived mostly from their art, but the most important thing that in the late of the 18th century, the occupation of Kobzar became the almost exclusive province of the blind people. So all Kobzars were blind. That's why in that painting, Kobzar is staying next to a little boy, because the little boy is his guide. And here you can see famous Ukrainian Kobzars, Mikhailo Kravchenko and Petro Drevchenko, you see, and with little boy, and the boy is their guide. And Ukrainian minstrels, Ukrainian Kobzars were performers, singers, but I personally love a quotation from Canadian researcher Natalia Kononenko, who said that they were the repositories of tradition and culture. They were the disseminators of the words of God and the major source of historical and religious information. And this is, I believe, this is very beautiful. But what happened to the Ukrainian Kobzars? Sometimes in the 1930s, they were invited to participate in a big conference in Kharkiv. All Ukrainian Kobzars came to this conference and they were repressed. They were all killed. At least this is what a very common historical legend tells us. But look, for some reason, after 1930s, there were no Kobzars in Ukraine. No anymore. Or maybe another version, that this culture disappeared because of the Holodomor, the artificial famine of 1932-1933 in Ukraine. So there is a very interesting movie. The title of this movie is The Guide, over there, The Guide. And if you have a chance to watch this movie, that would be wonderful. That's the movie tells us the story about the Ukrainian Kobzars of 1930s. Okay, wonderful. So, as I mentioned before, Ukrainian Cossacks were defenders of our faith, of our Orthodox Christianity, right? So, and there are many, this is the last Kobzar of Ostap Kindrachuk, who by the way lived right now in Crimea. and he's not blind actually, but he's a very, very passionate performer of the old Ukrainian songs. And that's the monument to Kozak Mamai in Kiev. You can see it. Kozak, a saber, a musical instrument, so that's a typical image. So let me tell you a bit more about traditions related to Christianity. So Cossacks, they were preserved Christianity for Ukrainians, right? So, and there are many traditions related to Christianity, but probably the most unique and rich are Christmas tradition. In Soviet Ukraine, most Christmas rituals have disappeared, but some of them have been revived in post-Soviet Ukraine, and especially right now in independent Ukraine, particularly in Western Ukraine, where I was born and grew up. And it is important to mention that the dates, this year, the dates of some holidays were changed due to political reorientation of Ukrainian people and government. Maybe you have heard that before we celebrate the Ukrainian Christmas in January, but right now we celebrate Ukrainian Christmas with the whole world, with the whole Europe in December. But in Ukraine, it's not just one Christmas celebration, it's a whole cycle of beautiful, absolutely beautiful holidays. So probably the most important holiday is the most interesting part is the Holy Eve, and we have the Holy Eve is a celebration of Christmas with 12 lean, meatless, and milkless dishes, and the magical. We have a special greeting for Christmas. We say Christos родився, Christ is born, and the reply is Slavimo Его, let's glorify Him. So there is a special greeting for this particular time. And the Holy Supper, the order of dishes and the dishes themselves are not uniform for everywhere. In many regions they are different. And each region of Ukraine has its own tradition, but there is a main ritual dish, and this main dish is kutya. So here you can see kutya. It's a ritual dish of boiled grains, usually wheat berries mixed with honey, nuts, poppy seeds, and as one of my students said, it tastes much better than it looks. So I agree with him completely. So that's, and after that, another wonderful tradition is Christmas caroling. And the carolers go from one household to another household, wishing the host a prosperous and generous year. And we, during this Christmas caroling, we sing Christmas carols. And there are two types of Christmas carols. We have kolядки and щедрівки. So you do know one Ukrainian Christmas carol for sure. The name of this Christmas carol is Щедрик, but in English-speaking world, you know this as the Carol of the Bells. You know Carol of the Bells, yes? So I would like, if you are interested in the story of this Carol of the Bells, I would like to recommend this article written by Ukrainian researcher Tina Peresunko. As we know, the original Щедрик, which means generous, is not a Christmas carol, but a ritual Ukrainian New Year song that was performed in the spring to celebrate the arrival of the new year in ancient times. Therefore, the text refers to a swallow that flies to the owner's house and blesses him for a happy new year. Because for a long time, this song was a part of Ukrainian folklore until the 1916, when the composer, Mykola Leontovich, created a choral masterpiece from the simple tune. The tune of the original music, the original Ukrainian music, music was really very simple. Only 4 notes. Ой да пан господар, а він сидить в кінці стола, а він сидить та. Very simple. And yes, and then Leontovich created this masterpiece with beautiful polyphony, which is just really a masterpiece. Unfortunately, I probably, you know the song, so probably I don't want to just switch the slides right now. Okay, and the first performance was in 1916. It happened in Kyiv. That was time. It was performed by the students of at that time Kyiv University, by the students of the choir of Kyiv University, and I'm happy to say that my husband and I, we were members of, not in 1916 of course, later when we were students, we were members of this amazing Ukrainian university choir. So, but how did Shedrik get overseas? In 1917, the Bolshevik Revolution happened, and Ukraine proclaimed its independence. That's the first time in Ukrainian history. Ukraine proclaimed Ukrainian People Republic. It happened in 1918. And the famous Ukrainian leader at that time, Simon Petliura, sent the choir to Europe to promote the newly independent state. So that was it was a step of cultural diplomacy. It was an element of cultural diplomacy at that time. So on February 4th, 1919, the choir left Kyiv on the last evacuation train. And on February 5th, the Russian Bolshevik seized the Ukrainian capital. So the Ukrainian state ceased to exist at that time, unfortunately. Unfortunately, then the choir was in Europe in 1921. Leontovich, the composer, was killed by an agent of the secret police at that time. And it's another tragic story. So in 1922, the choir came to the US, and in January 1922, that happened in January. On October 5th, 1922, the choir gave its premiere in Carnegie Hall, and that was a great success. And this is how this Ukrainian carol Shedrik became very famous here in the US. And then in 1936, Carol of the Bells finally appeared because the famous American conductor and composer of Slavic origin, Peter Vilgovsky, created the new lyrics. So he kept the melody, he created new lyrics, and he mentioned, I took out the Ukrainian words about Shedrik and increased focus on the cheerful ringing of bells that I heard in the music. And this is how Carol of the Bells appeared, and this is how you know the Carol of the Bells. Right now, you sing the Carol of the Bells. Another very interesting, by the way, look at this, Carol of the Bells sometimes was considered here in the US as a Russian song, which is not a Russian song, which is a beautiful Ukrainian carol. Another very famous tradition for Ukraine is Velykdень, or Easter. And in Ukraine, Velykdeń means the great day, because that's the great day for Ukrainian culture. Traditionally, it includes many stages of preparation. For instance, the first day before Easter is called Чистый четверг, clean Thursday. People usually clean their homes, or on Friday they contemplating on death, the death of Jesus. Most cooking is done on Saturday, and it's a very beautiful tradition. In early morning, people usually go to churches, and there are beautiful ceremonies in church and outside with Easter baskets, and Easter baskets are blessed with holy water and illuminated with candles, like you can see here. And here people are very happy. They came to churches, bring their Easter baskets. For Easter baskets, you can often have like meat, sausages, eggs, right? And a special bread, we call this Pascha. It's a special Easter bread, so that's Pascha. Here you can see very nice Easter bread. Here Svitlana's Easter bread. I baked it in 2020. Doesn't look so nice, but that was, believe me, that was delicious. Decent. It was decent. Also, the tradition, you already know about this tradition, that's Pisanki tradition in Ukrainian culture. So Ukrainian painted eggs are Pisanki, and we derived this word from the word pisati, because we are writing our stories on those eggs, right? We are writing our lives with different symbols. And it's a very beautiful tradition. It became very famous in the 19th century, and it was in the 19th century. It was a part of the scholarship when the famous Ukrainian anthropologist Fedor introduced this culture first to Ukraine and then to the world. So basically, those are very beautiful traditions, and they all became very important for Ukraine in the 19th century. Because at that time, the 19th century is the century of the national revival in many European countries, and Ukraine was not an exception. There was a national revival in Ukraine. And if you want to know, if you need to know one name from the national revival of Ukraine, it will be one name, and the name is Taras Shevchenko. So I would like to say a few words about this. Basically, that's a Pisanka Museum. It's a Pisanka Museum in Ukraine. And here you can see a very big monument in Canada. So this is the biggest Pisanka ever, a Ukrainian painted egg. And actually, you see it's huge, and it was dedicated to the Canadian mountain. So yes, and this is Taras Shevchenko. There is a very beautiful video, just a 10-minute video about Taras Shevchenko, and the title of this video, "The Serb Who Founded a Nation," right? And that was exactly what happened. A Serb founded a nation. So I don't think I have much time to go through all my slides, but I would like to show you a few slides. There are so many monuments to Taras Shevchenko in the world, more than 1,000 monuments in the world. And here the monument, one of them is in Washington, D.C., by the way. Taras Shevchenko was born in central Ukraine, and he was born as a Serb. And before he died, his father said that Taras would be either a great man or a great lazy bone. So Taras is a great man. Taras was a great man. Yeah. So he is absolutely a genius, but he was a serf, and as a serf he came to Russia with his master. In Russia, in St. Petersburg, he met Ukrainians, and they actually created a lottery prize, and those Ukrainian compatriots bought out Shevchenko from serfdom. It happened in 1838. Shevchenko finally became free. In Ukrainian culture and probably in the world culture, he is well known as a writer, as a poet, as a prophet, but professionally he was an artist. He graduated from St. Petersburg Art Academy. Here you can see the beautiful masterpieces by Taras Shevchenko. His first book was published in 1840, and look at this, the name of the book is Kobzar. Again, back to we have this cycle. Ukrainian Cossacks, Ukrainian Kobzars, Taras Shevchenko, Ukrainian identity. That's the core of Ukrainian identity. So, and then he was arrested because he became, in 1846, he became a member of the Slavic Cyril Methodius Society, and he was arrested because he was against the empire, against the Tsar. So he was sent, he was exiled as a private in 1847 to very horrible places, and spent 10 years other in exile as a soldier, actually as a soldier, as a private. And look at him. You see, what do you think? How old is he here? Hard to tell, yes. But can you say that this man is about 45 years old, 47 years old? Probably not. No, probably not. But he died before. He died, and then he was a day after his 47th birthday. Right? So look how this person suffered. So he died in St. Petersburg, and then he was reburied in his beloved Ukraine, and that's Shevchenko's grave. And why Shevchenko is so important for our national identity, and why he created our nation. And I believe it's because he is the core of our identity. Shevchenko was so important for our culture because he was a great patriot and national poet. He was a philosopher who speaks metaphorically and simply in a plain language about complexity of life. His poetry became was rich of full of folklore tradition, very melodic and emotional. But probably the most important thing, that his poetry resonates with our fight for freedom. And I personally love this quotation by a famous historian Andrew Wilson, who said, Shevchenko gives a much clearer answer to the question of who is a Ukrainian and who is a Russian. The difference between Russia and Ukraine was above all cultural and political, a love of liberty for one's own against the imperialist desire to rule all others in chain. And I think it's a very beautiful and prominent quotation. Yeah. And in my testament, I would have a very prominent quotation by Taras Shevchenko: "Bury me and arise, break your chains, and sprinkle your freedom with the enemy's evil blood. And don't forget to remember me in the great family, in a family new and free, with a kind and quiet word." And this is what we are doing right now. We are fighting with Shevchenko. We are fighting for our freedom. And there are many memes with Shevchenko. Shevchenko crossed the boundaries of his time. He is with us right now. He is in Ukraine. He is a member of our community. So you can see him everywhere. He's fighting with us. Especially look at this, Shevchenko with a huge javelin, right, is protecting the Ukrainian state right now. So, and then that was the 19th century, right? Revival, the national revival. And then the 20th century brought new changes, and brought new challenges to Ukrainian culture. So it was a very productive time in literature, art, theater, music. The most prominent of these contributions was the avant-garde traditions that were very beautiful. And in the 1930s, there were attacks on Ukrainian intellectuals, peasants, even Communist Party leaders. 4 million people died during the Holodomor, the artificial famine. People starving to death as part of campaign to crush peasants' resistance to collectivization in Ukraine in 1932-1933. Stalin warned his associates that such measures were needed to prevent the loss of control over Ukraine, and the land was completely devastated. The breadbasket of Europe was devastated by the famine. The trials against Ukrainian intellectuals became common after 1930. And the famous researcher Yuri Lavrinenko called this particular period the executed Renaissance. Because many Ukrainian intellectuals, writers, poets, they were executed, simply lost their lives. Let me show you a few names, a few pictures. Les Kurbas, he was a famous theater director. Mikhailo Boychuk, a famous artist. Vasil Sigar, a prominent artist. Mikhailo Semenko, a prominent writer. Valerian Pygmovirny, a prominent writer. Mykola Zerov, a prominent writer. They were executed, many of them here, in this particular place. The name is Sandarmoh. It's a forest in Karelia in Russia. And you know when they were executed? In 1937. Do you remember? Do you know why in 1937? Because this is how the Soviet authority commemorate the 20th anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution by killing people in that particular place. That happened in 1937. So that's the place. So that's the executed Renaissance in Ukraine. But unfortunately, executed Renaissance continues now in Ukraine. As many of our writers, artists, and intellectuals died because of the war. And here you can see just a few names. Victoria Amelina, Maxim Krivtsov, Gleb Babych, Volodymyr Vakulenko. This is Victoria Amelina. She died last summer during a missile attack in Kramatorsk. A very extremely talented author, extremely talented young poet. I would like to read, to commemorate her with reading one of these short poems, Sirens. Air raid sirens across the country. It feels like everyone is brought out for execution, but only one person gets targeted, usually with the one at the edge. This time not you. All clear. And she happened to be at the edge, and she died, unfortunately. So there is a huge list of all Ukrainian writers, all Ukrainian intellectuals who died because of this war. So war is destruction, and I was reading in news and I saw a very interesting quotation. The quotation was, "War is destruction," by one of our artists, not very famous. "War is destruction. Now art is a portal of revival." But I would like to rephrase this and say that now culture, Ukrainian culture, is a portal of revival. And I hope you lecture this. You like the lecture, and this lecture will be an inspiration for you to learn more about Ukrainian culture in the future. And stand with Ukraine. And thank you so much. And Slava Ukraini.